Alright, no wisecracks about the bare feet. When I was little, we lived in the country and I didn't like to wear shoes unless I was forced into them. My name is Tommy Hale. I am about 8 years old and in the Cub Scout. I am also going to be your tour guide. And besides that, I'm going to be the editor, the director, the producer, the program manager, and the historian of this historic film. What we are about to view are old 8mm films mixed with photographs starting back in 1937. This is a story of my sister Betty Louise and myself, of our parents and some of our relatives. It is an effort to preserve some of the family history for the future generations. Now that's my sister, and she has a golf club in her hand. Let's start in the year 1937.
That's my dad, Pearlie Hale, with me in his arms. That's my mom, Zoe Hale, with me in her arms. And I have an older sister. She's so old, she already knows walk and talk and push a baby buggy. This is my grandma on my dad's side, Edith Hale, and she lived in East San Diego. And I can remember up until I was about 12 years old how often we would go and visit her and she would tell stories. Here's a photograph of Edith Hale, my grandmother, great-grandmother to Tammy and Holly and Laura, and great-great-grandmother to Sage and Catalina and Zoe and Ian. My name really is Tommy Hale, and a lot of you did not know that there was a Tommy Hale in the family, but there really is. My dad had a best friend by the name of Tommy Willis, and that's where they came up with the name Tommy. Now he also had an uncle, Tommy Willis did, by the name of Charles, and he was another one of my dad's best friends. So they wanted to call me Thomas Charles Hale. But my dad or my parents found out that there was an entertainer with the name of Thomas Charles, so they simply reversed the name and named me Charles Thomas. I was known as Tommy until I entered high school in 1952, where upon my own I decided to use my first name and my last name. So I am now known as Chuck Hale, or Uncle Chuck, or Grandpa, whatever you want to call me. My sister gets to do all the fun stuff. She gets to go horseback riding, she gets to go into a swing, and I'm too small for all that stuff. Remember, this is 1937, so this is just about 65 years ago as I'm making these pictures. Now when you get a chance, focus on some of these older people in this movie. Check out how they're dressed and the old cars that you see in the background. It's kind of fascinating how far we've come with vehicles. There's a good shot of it. By the way, here is a couple of elderly gentlemen with my grandmother, and I do not know who these folks are. I don't know whether they're grandpas or uncles or great uncles or anybody. Anyway, in this still picture I have captured on the right hand side is Howard, and then there's Alma and Nadine down below, and that's my sister on the right. Good picture of Howard and Alma and Nadine. Remember, this is before my cousin Orv was born. Now my dad was an avid fisherman, and of course I like to do that too, so I took it up years later. But there's some great pictures of him fishing. This is back in about 1937. Well, there I am, still a kid. This brings me to Landis Street in East San Diego. My sister and I talked, and I understand that my parents rented a place in Normal Heights on Mississippi Street for a couple years, but I don't know whether that was her first couple years or my first couple years. I do know that we rented a place on Landis Street, and Landis Street runs parallel to University in East San Diego. University Avenue ran all the way from Hillcrest out to the La Mesa area. And the nearest major cross street was Euclid, and that ran north and south. And we were about 2 blocks west of Euclid, and my sisters told me that the cross street there was Roselawn. Now, we do have a difference of opinion. I felt that the house, or believed that the house, was on the southwestern corner of Landis and Roselawn. My sister said the northeast corner. Now, I believe that the house faced northeast. But anyway, regardless, that's the corner streets, in case anybody wants to go down and look it out. About 30 years ago, Dorothy and I had been married, I say, a couple years, 1968, something like that. We were in San Diego, and we did stop there. I showed her the old house, knocked on the door, and did get the opportunity to go through the house. The residents let me go through after I explained that that's where I lived for the first 4.5 years of my life. Anyway, some of the scenes that you see. By the way, I was a very fat baby. I understand I was over 9 pounds. That's a lot of kid when you're getting born. Anyway, these pictures where we're playing in the water, I'm guessing that this is up near Green Valley Falls in the Cuyamaca Mountains. My parents were very good about taking Betty and I on weekend trips. My dad was, of course, working during the daytime. My mom was being a housewife. Look at that old car in the background. God, it'd be worth a fortune if you had something like that today in good condition. And this is Dandy when he was very small. You know, wherever we lived, we were always planting something. I get a kick out of my mom swinging that pick. I always had an older sister. Betty was always looking after me when I was growing up. A lot of pictures up here. Of course, later on when we were on vacation trips, we were always doing something together. Well, while we're watching some of these baby pictures, let me try and figure out some of the things that weren't invented yet, or at least we didn't have. There was no TV. Families were limited usually to one car. Most houses only had one bathroom. The computer was a long ways from being invented. World War II hadn't started yet. Electronic toys did not exist. For a telephone line, it was a party line in those days. That's where 3 or 4 families would share a single telephone line, and each telephone would have a distinct ring, so you knew which when the phone call was for you. It was interesting that if you picked up the telephone and somebody else was on the line, of course you knew it was being used, but if you felt like it, you could eavesdrop on somebody else's conversation. The cell phone hadn't been invented. Shopping malls didn't exist. If you wanted to go shopping, you went downtown. Oh yes, I can tell you another thing. I noticed my dad's there's got a little artwork going. Pearlie Hale worked for Carnation Milk Company, and I would take that back. He worked for Quality Dairy, which was a milk company that was later bought out by Carnation. And he was a sign painter for them. Okay, I'm going to take a break here now. This coming up is a picture of Alice Post, and she is still alive today. This is March of 2003. She's got to be well into her 90s. I believe that's Dorma Lee down in front. My mom is in the middle. My grandmother is on the left, and Betty Louise is on the far left. Anyway, my grandparents had a turkey farm. Now, in the back of my mind, I have that turkey farm was out in Tustin. Now, I don't know why I believe that, but I just, somewhere in the back of my head, I believe it was in Tustin, out near Irvine Lake. Now, I remember my grandparents only when they lived in Montebello, and there'll be some pictures later on of living in Montebello. Also, even though my mother's name was, maiden name was Blair, Elizabeth, often called Bettina or Betty, was married more than once, and she was married to Homer McMillan, and Homer McMillan I remember quite well, so he's like a step-grandfather. At least I got one that I can remember. Anyway, here's some good pictures of my mom and my grandmother, and it's a house up in Montebello, and I do remember going and visiting that house. Anyway, what else was not invented? Oh, here's a picture of my mom and my dad, and they are visiting La Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles. I have had the opportunity to take Dorothea and Tammy when she was a small girl, also up to La Brea Tar Pits. Well worth visiting. Let's see, I told you that World War II hadn't started. Oh, the jet airplane had not been invented yet, or had not been did not come into play until towards the end of World War II. Cell phones weren't invented. What we did for entertainment during the day or evening times is we would sit in front of the radio and listen to radio shows, and they had quite a few of that. Anyway, I wanted to take a chance here and show you some photographs of Elizabeth Blair, and she, of course, was mother to Zoe Carmen Blair, my mother, and grandmother to Betty and Chuck, great-grandmother to Laura, Holly, and Tamara, and great-great-grandmother to Sage, Zoe, Catalina, and Ian. This is the oldest photograph in my collection, somewhere in 1915 or 16, probably 16, because my mom was born in December of 1915, and it is the oldest photograph of the twins. Here's a picture of my dad at a very young age. I have no idea how old he was. Oh, I started to say that he worked for Quality Dairy and then for Carnation Milk Company, and he was a sign painter. Now, he not only did the signs on the trucks. By the way, in those days, milk was delivered to your front door. You normally didn't have to go into a grocery store and pick up the milk. There I am. I'm starting to walk. Anyway, he would also visit stores where they did sell milk, and he would do little signs on the windows and put up advertisements for quality dairy products. And I guess like at the county fair, my dad would build booths. By the way, you notice the swing set and the sand box and stuff like that. My dad always would build these things so that us kids would always have things to do around the house, to play around the house. Now, coming up here is another place where I have done a frame grabber. That's where I simply grab a frame out of the picture, and it shows my sister on a rocking horse. Now, my dad built that rocking horse and painted it for my sister and for me, I assume. And years later, remember this is about 1937, 38, about 1966, when my daughter was born, Tamara Ellie Hale, my dad, Pearlie Hale, built another one, almost exactly a duplicate of that rocking horse, and we still have that in the family today, or I should say that my daughter still has it. My grandson Ian played with it. Oh, there's my sister playing with the flowers. She's still playing with flowers today, but if it makes her happy, who am I going to question that? Anyway, see, like these swing sets, you know, we didn't have all these stores to go visit and all the electronic devices to entertain us and stuff like that, so we kind of had to do it ourselves. Later on, as we got older, we would get together with the neighborhood kids and play games, you know, like hide and go seek and red light, green light, things like that. Well, I just thought of another piece of trivia. As most of you know, Pearlie Hale became an artist after he retired. He retired when he was about 63 years old. And he told me several times as I was growing up and we would be on these wonderful vacations that when he retired he wanted to go back to school and become an artist, and he went back to school and he became an artist, and he would show his paintings down at the waterfront. And I'm sure that Holly and Laura and Tamara remember visiting him down at the waterfront and where he showed his pictures. And as a result of selling pictures, and he was able to afford to travel quite extensively and make sketches of places that he went and paint more pictures. Now there's a picture of my mom riding a horse. I have no idea where we were when those pictures were taken. Anyway, first 4.5 years were on Landis Street. There was just a matter of growing up. I was really a blonde-haired, silver-haired little kid, quite blonde. Of course, if you look at me now, it's gray, but somewhere in between it went from blonde to brown to now gray. And my grandma Hale. And there's my mom and her son. She was a good mom. Now there I am with a girl. Always the story of my life. I have no idea who she is. Some neighborhood kid. But here she's making a move on me. And I don't want any part of it. You know, what can I tell you? Oh my goodness. Hi Betty. Hi Dad. My dad had grown a mustache, and he was very proud of the mustache. He was a skinny guy. Yeah, I see that. I've had a goatee for the last 30 years. Oh, now there's Betty and me, and Betty was always looking after me when I was young. And when we would go on trips together, we would always do things together. Parents took us a lot of different places. I have no idea what they're trying to sing here, but obviously it must be important. Oh, there's another picture coming up here of the rocking horse. Ian, I hope you hang on to that. My dad, like I said, was a artist in his retirement, and here is a old photograph of him painting a picture. In this case, it was chalk, and it was of Half Dome. And he always wanted to be an artist, and by God, he became an artist. And, he didn't pass any of those talents on to me, though. Now here's some old photographs we'll go through, and in this section, there's a picture of me and my mom in our yard on Landis Street. And a picture of my mom that I got from their trip to La Brea Tar Pits. And here's one that I love dearly. This one is at Devil's Post Pile in front of my favorite fishing hole. Good memories. And this is a family photograph. I'm about 3 and my sister's about 7. That was a very first family photograph. This was a staged photograph for a company newspaper that was produced by my dad's milk company. There's me with a Lionel train. That Lionel train would be worth a fortune today. And there's a picture of my sister Betty Louise and me, Tommy Hale, or now Chuck. And I'm about 10 here, and I believe my sister's about 14 there. Well, let's see. These are the first colored motion picture films. We switched back and forth between black and white and the colored films because the colored films were base. As you can see, I am a little bit older, and we are out on one of the family outings. I have no idea who these other kids are, but I assume that they are the children of friends of the family. One of the things that my parents, our parents, Zoe and Pearlie, would do is take us on outings. This looks like it's up near Julian, just based on the shrubbery in the background and the view here. And that was one of our favorite areas, is going up around Julian and Lake Cuyamaca, and sometimes out to the deserts. That's a pretty Yaka plan. Let's see. Anyway, in learning how to do these editing these films that we're looking at, I'm still having a bit of a problem with the volume control. Now that dog is Dandy, and I remember him. He lived until I was about 12 years old, and I was absolutely heartbroken when he died. That was the first time I had ever lost anything that I loved dearly. As you can see, we went out to the beach. We did a lot of things as family, and I get a kick out of this. See this little maroon outfit? Boy, God, it seems like I was wearing that everywhere. There's a lot of pictures here, me running around that little maroon outfit. San Diego Zoo, still one of the best zoos in the world. It was always fun to go there and see it. And that bridge is still there. This is back in front of the house, again, still on Landis Street. To go back in time a little bit, I wanted to say that in those days, we were lucky that we had a telephone, and it was a party line. Now, a lot of you don't know what a party line is, but that is where 3 or 4 or 5 families would share the same telephone line. And each family had a different sound to the ring. And if you wanted to make a call and you picked up the phone and somebody else was on the telephone at another family, you hung up and waited your turn, or you could sit there and listen to what everybody else was talking about. But that's what we had, was a party line. Now, I have no idea who these folks are, but now there's a good picture of my sister and I, and look at Betty Louise and her curly hair. I mean, her hair is really done up really well. Now looks like a get-together at my grandmother's house. Anytime you see that chimney in the background, that's at my grandmother's house. And my grandmother on my dad's side had 6 children. She had Edith Hale, that was daughter, married in 1905 in Chicago, and Garnet Hale was born in 1907 in Garnet. My dad, Pearlie Llewellyn Hale, was born again in San Diego in 1908. Ross Howard Orville Hale was born in 1910, and that was Howard Hale, my favorite uncle. There was a Donald Hale, was born October 13th, 1912, but he died at age 2. I don't know what the complications were there. Then Sidney Hale was, hi Betty, you're looking good. Sidney Hale was born April 28th, 1914, also in San Diego. And the youngest of the Hale clan was Eileen Dorothy Florence Hale, born on February 15th, 1917. And it looks like she was born in Charleston, Washington. I don't know why that was in the notes there. Anyway, that was the generations. Now this one is a unique picture here. This is the San Diego River going over Padre Dam, and there is seldom any water in that river, so there apparently had been a tremendous amount of rainstorm out there. That almost looks dangerous where she's standing, but you can't see the whole area. But anyway, that was the Hale family, and that's Eileen, and looks like she was pregnant in that picture, and she married a guy by the name of Ray Melmelander, and he was another one that was always enjoyable to be around, always funny. Let's see, I mentioned about having a party line, and look at the Landis Street and Roselawn are still dirt streets in those days. Anyway, I mentioned that the party line. We also that most houses just had a single bathroom. Phone calls cost a nickel. Coca-Cola was a nickel. Hershey bars was 2 cents. And one of the favorite forms of transportation in those days was taking a streetcar. Looks like that's a friend of my dad's. Anyway, my grandmother and I would take streetcars and go to Balboa Park together. And oh God, I can remember riding those streetcars. This looks like it's almost out in La Mesa area. 4421 Dale Avenue, La Mesa, California. The land was purchased in 1941, and we moved in January of 1942. The land was vacant land. It was a lemon orchard originally. That's my Uncle Sid surveying the property, my dad cutting down the shrubbery. They had to burn the bushes and the trees, stumps had to be removed. It was typical country. I mean, let's see, 1941, I was 4.5 years old, and there's the land. Can you imagine purchasing that land for $200 and building a 3-bedroom house for $5,000? And there the house is under construction. Now, very lucky, my parents saved their money and worked towards building a house. In those days, it only took one income. My mom was still being a housewife, and my dad and mom saved their money. The garage that we had was actually a single car garage. That's all they had in those days. And this was where they were pouring the slab for the garage. And it was really country out there where you could go barefooted. And we had my sister and I would have to walk to school, which was about a mile and a half. My parents, to save money, painted the house themselves. And here we are in January of 1942. So this is just about a month after Pearl Harbor. So it gives you a time frame there. That's my sister. That room that they're coming out of was my bedroom for a lot of years. The side porch was later enclosed and made into a kitchenette area. This was a neighbor up the street by the name of Delancher. And that's Vonnie Delancher there. She and I went to school from elementary, junior high, and high school. I was absolutely scared to death to get on that horse. I still remember how my parents forced me to get on that horse. Yeah, I don't hate horses as a result of it, but I still remember being so damn scared. Anyway, there we are, growing up. I'm guessing my sister's about 8 or 9 years old, and I'm 5 or 6 years old. And look at the old car we had. I don't remember what year that car was, but that was an old car that brought us our transportation. There's our dog Dandy, and here shortly you're going to see what I mean by country, because we raised all sorts of animals there. Yeah, that's my mom, my sister, and I. Look at the backyard. Now, remember I had told you earlier about my dad being handy. He built this swing set here. There was a ladder for me to climb, swings for us to use, bars to chin ourselves in, and look at my sister. She's pretty good on all that stuff. And there's a duck. Now, we raised ducks. And you will see here shortly that we raised chickens. And I believe that was what they call a banner chicken? I don't know. Anyway, these are fruits and vegetables that came out of our own backyard. This was the sidewalk that went around the side of the garage. Now, the extra concrete here, my dad made a little square, and we all put our handprints in it. And I believe that slab was dated 1942. And I believe that my daughter, Holly now, also has that stone. And as you can see that where the lawn is in, the planter blocks is in, they're me doing somersaults. And my parents were very hard workers, and as kids we had to help out. Now if you look down Dale Avenue there's just no house built next to us, and now that every square inch of that area is built up. That old tent was used on camping trips. That's the way we would go camping. And God, the place is really growing up now. I got to be at least about 6 or almost 7. So here's my Uncle Sid, my grandmother, Grandma Hale, and my, let's see, there's a picture of my sister and probably, I bet you, a Christmas gift. I have no idea who that lady is there, but I don't think it was Sid's wife at that time. I think my Uncle Sid was still single. That's the way we would separate the fertilizer, is throw it through that screen there. We had turkeys. We actually had a pig. We raised a pig to slaughter for food. That pig got to be up to 500 pounds before we sent him to the slaughterhouse. I believe that we called him George. As you can see, it's still no fences up. There's me and my dog Dandy. There was a pepper tree in the very, very back of the lot that I used to build tree forts in. I believe property has been split in two. Dorothy and I purchased the house at one time and split the property in two, and somebody built a house in the back. Uncle Sid and his golf. My Uncle Sid had a girlfriend by the name of Marie Jacks, and he taught Marie Jacks how to play golf. And in a short period of time, Marie Jacks could beat him, and he quit dating her. She went on to become California champion. There's my sister with her golf club. Here's a family reunion, usually at Christmas time, and I won't name all the people that were in the picture there. Look at all the chickens we had. We raised grapes. We had avocado trees, apricot trees, peach trees, lemon trees, orange trees. Yeah, you name it. We had it a lot. Well, that's quite a big-sized bicycle for my sister to be riding, but she looked like she's doing a good job riding that thing. Growing up in La Mesa. Probably, these pictures are probably 1943 through 1948. That is Virginia Mellon, next door neighbor, and her husband Gene Mellon. Virginia is still alive today. By the way, I have never said what today is. Right now I'm currently working on these pictures. It is February 21st in the year 2003. So these pictures that you're looking at are over 58 years old. I believe that was a cousin of mine by the name of Guy Williams. I'm not positive about that. Look at the old car in the background. Anyway, we're back to black and white films. Like I told you that colored films were motion was expensive. There's an olive tree that we had planted. Later on, as it got to be a big tree, my dad would harvest the olives and cure them. That was Grandma Hale then. I don't remember the name of that dog, but the only one that really survived a long time was Dandy. I'm going to tell you about growing up in La Mesa. Again, no TV yet. I did not have TV until I was 12 years old, which would be about 1949. Learning to roller skate, doing all the things that kids like to do. I had a best friend. I remember his name was Jimmy Dinsmore. I don't know how I can remember that. It was so many years ago. And we used to do everything together. He used to live up on the Normal, if I remember right, which was a street up at the end of Dale Avenue. But good friend. I mentioned no TV. What we did for entertainment a lot of times in the evening time, well, in the mornings, on Saturday mornings, I can remember that too, but in the evening times we would listen to the radio. And there would be like detective stories or westerns, Hopalong Cassidy, and I remember Sunday mornings, my sister and I would listen to Let's Pretend. That was a big deal. People were not concerned about keeping the houses locked in those days. By the way, let's see what some of the other things we didn't have. The jet plane had not been invented yet. That was towards the end of World War II. Of course, there was no cell phones. We were still using a party line in those days. There was no such thing as electronic toys. I did have a Lionel train. I'll have to slip a picture in that of the Lionel train. It was a classic in those days. God, I can see that. By the way, that's corn in the background. That was one of the many things that we grew in the our backyard. Was we had during World War II we had what we called a victory garden, and we raised squash and cucumbers and radishes and onions. And look at this. This is a party out in the back lawn. That's a long sausage. I believe my cousin Orb is in here someplace that I wanted to get specifically for him. He is my favorite cousin. Still feel very close to him today. Let's see. Anyway, this was a family get-together on the back lawn. Families did a lot of things in those days together, and of course everybody was living in the San Diego area. Years later, after I got married, Dorothy and I moved up to the Orange County area, and that's where we live today. Speaking about today, I am 65 years old, and in a few days, on the 26th of February, my sister Betty Louise Newton will be 69 years old, and I better remember to call her and wish her a happy birthday. Boy, that old teeter-totter. And I don't know who that is, whether it's a local girl or whether that was one of the nieces. We had Alice Post had a daughter by the name of Aletha that was younger than me, and I understand she still lives in San Diego. Now there's my sister and a couple girlfriends, and they are pretending to be all dressed up. And my gosh, we got some colored film again. I'm guessing she's got to be about 10 years old now. So that's about 59 years ago, 58 years ago, something like that. But there was a lot of kids in the neighborhood. In the evening times, I can remember we would meet out in the streets. We weren't worried about traffic in those days. We would go out in the streets and we would play games like tag and kick the can and red light, green light. Did all sorts of things together. Now, we've changed automobiles. I can see that in the background. And of course, I am learning how to ride a bicycle. You know, I wonder if those two kids are from next door neighbors. That's a strong possibility. That fence in the background was built by my dad. Later on, you will see a dug trench alongside that fence, not on that side, but on the other side of the property. There was so much runoff from the hillsides in the rainstorm. There's Grandma Blair. She'd come down from Montebello to visit us. Anyway, the rain, when we did get rain in San Diego or La Mesa area, it would come down the hillsides and wash across our property. So my dad built a ditch between the melons on the south side of our house and us for the runoff. He was always very proud of that. It was quite a project, because you figure a half acre of land, that's, I don't know what the length of that is, but it's quite long. Oh, there I am, and teaching the dog how to do tricks. Later on in life, I had a couple more dogs that I taught, Buster and Max. That was in front of the across the street were a favorite family, like second mom and dad to me, by the name of Heights, Wes and Fran Height. And this was a favorite game we had as kids. I would make a marble track, and that is taking a hose and laying it side by side and then rolling the marble down the track. I remember when Ian was growing up, we would do that also, make of course, by then we had started to get electronic toys, so we'd have like radio-controlled automobiles. They didn't even think of those things when we were young. We had to make scooters ourselves out of roller skates, and we played together, and that's the way it was. That looks like fun, just running through a sprinkler head, getting wet. We had a half acre of land, and the back half we used for an orchard and gardens and raising chickens, and that's my mom running a tractor plowing the earth. We would plant corn, and we had a victory garden during World War II where we raised all sorts of squashes. We had all sorts of different trees out there. My favorite tree was a plum tree, and all the plums we'd get every year out of that thing, just enough to break branches, and they were just absolutely delicious. But there's my mom operating a tractor. You know what a swag is? A swag is a scientific wild-ass guess. I'm thinking this is about 1945, 1946, somewhere around in there. There's my mom. As you can see, the plants are growing up. Well, that's Alma Hale back there, and that is mother of my favorite cousin, Orv. And my grandma Hale, and I don't know. Okay, so we're having a barbecue in the backyard. My Uncle Howard's off to the right there, and I think that's Orv right there, cooking the hot dogs over an over pit fire. Now, we used to have an enclosed patio, but that wasn't for a couple years after this. My dad built an enclosed patio that Dorothy and I had our wedding reception there. I'm not sure whether Gil and Betty had their wedding reception there or not. Anyway, that was it was built right about where that swing set was. Years later, there was a huge poplar tree next to the patio, and during a heavy rainstorm and heavy winds, the tree blew over and destroyed the patio. We had to clear it off and just leave the slab there. Oh, here's that trench I was telling you about. That was a lot of hard work, but my dad dug this trench between the melons and our house for runoff, because the runoff from the hills above us came right down through our yards, and this way we controlled it. Once in a while we'd get enough rain that would actually flood the place. Now I'm guessing I'm about 7 years old there, maybe 8 at the very most. If this is in fact 1945, that would make my sister 11 years old in this where she was confirmed. And this is in front of the old St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in La Mesa before they moved it out and built a new building out on Lemon Avenue east of it. But there she is, all grown up, or growing up. Now, if it's 1945, I have to be about, well, let's see, 7 years old. World War II ended in August of 1945, and I think this is a birthday party here, so it would be about the 15th of August. I think that is a cousin of mine by the name of Aletha Post. That's just a guess. Here's pictures of my sister and girlfriends and growing up, and there's me, and I believe that's Jimmy Dinsmore. Let's see, if I was born in 37 and this is 45, that'd be about 8 years old. My wife was just waving her fingers in front of my face and correcting me. Anyway, we was always playing in the dirt. There's some scenes up here of the backyard still under development. That's my mom, and probably either by the apricot tree or the peach tree. Eventually the front half of the backyard was fenced in, and the patio was built that I discussed earlier, and all these fruit trees. And I'm small enough that we can't even push that lawnmower, so I'm guessing about 7 or 8, because we're struggling in that thing. But we're making progress. The La Mesa property is slowly being developed. And I have to be going to school still in La Mesa. Oh, there's my cousin Orv and my Uncle Howard. And Orv and I and his wife Lina, we get together quite frequently and do things together. And he's always been, we had a lot of good memories as kids. We're now starting on some vacation pictures, and that's where a lot of this stuff goes now. And this is about 1946, 1947. And we're now visiting the Grand Canyon. And that's one of the things that I really did like as growing up. I always like this picture here. We go around that corner and then we hide. It looks like we're about to walk down in the Grand Canyon. We really don't. Anyway, and growing up, my dad would get 2 weeks vacation. We'd pile in the car with the camping gear, and off we go. And some of the vacation trips were very, very memorial. I mean, really good memories. We covered just about every national park, I think, in the western United States. Now, since those days, remember this is 1946-47, a tremendous amount of national parks and national monuments have been added, and so we're still visiting new places. I remember about 1968, we brought Dorothea's mom, who was visiting from Germany, to look by that tower out over the Grand Canyon. She almost fainted. She had never seen even travel films of the Grand Canyon, which is surprising. This looks like Bryce. Now, Bryce Canyon is one of Dorothea's and my favorite canyons. We have, in the last few years, that's year 2001, 2, and 3, we've actually gone down and walked some of the trails in Bryce Canyon. We have taken our grandson Ian on some of these trips, some long walks. And I don't know where this is, Rainbow. I don't know whether it's one of the, well, no, okay, this is still Bryce Canyon, yes, and there is a Rainbow Trail and the Fairyland Trail and we've got some tremendous pictures of us walking that. Now, from Bryce, we moved over into Zion. I don't remember Zion too well, except that there is a tremendously long tunnel. Turns out when I say tremendously long tunnel, it's about 1.25 miles or something like that, with turnouts. In this day and age, we have pulled our RV through that tunnel, and they've had to close off traffic in both directions, so the RVs will put their wheels in the middle of the yellow line, but they have the RVs go one way, then they have RVs go the other way, then they open it back up to open traffic again. Yeah, see, here, that was one of their turnouts, where inside the tunnel they have these views cut out of the side of the tunnel. But one of our favorite places still Bryce over Zion, but there's still fun places to visit. Took a tour of Hoover Dam and then came home from this trip. Well, vacation time, either 1947, 1948, we covered Yosemite National Park, Sequoia National Park, and Kings Canyon National Park. My sister reminded me that back when I was about 4 years old, in Yosemite National Park, we took Grandma Hale with us, and Grandma Hale was an outstanding storyteller, and at one of the evening campfires, she told the story about little orphan Annie, and just captivated the audience apparently quite well. Now, those waterfalls was Vernal and Nevada Falls, and my dad and I, when I was about 11 years old, 10 years old, something like that, did climb to the top of those falls, and we went fishing up there, and I absolutely did not have any luck catching fish, but it was a tremendous hike up there. I always remembered that. Of course, there's other, here's Sequoia National Park and some of the big redwoods. I got to revisit these things just this past year, in 2002, and these redwoods are huge when you're only about 10 or 11 years old, and you get older and they're still quite huge. Anyway, this was a tree that you could drive your car through. This tree has since fallen down. That was in the Waiwona trees outside of Yosemite. These national parks are reasonably close to each other. We did take a tour down into Kings Canyon, and very impressed with the flow of water through there. Anyway, good memories growing up of all these travels. My sister and I would sit in the back seat, and we would play games to keep ourselves occupied. On one of these trips, apparently we stopped by Grandma Blair's, my mom's mother, who was living in Montebello. Stop by and say hi on our way home to San Diego. This has really got to be 1948 summer vacation. The reason why I am reasonably sure of that is this was a vacation before we went to Yellowstone, and that was 1949. Anyway, this was a trip to Crater Lake, and we covered Virginia City and Lake Tahoe. And it's fun looking at these old photographs because these are over 50 years old, and I visited, or my family visited Crater Lake just this past summer. And got to tell you a funny story. We were camping, I look to be about 10 or 11 there. My sister has to be 14, maybe 15 years old. Anyway, Dorothea and I and our grandson were camped up near Crater Lake in an RV park with my daughter and son-in-law, and they had put up their tent right next to the trailer, and we had rain that night, and I had the awning out over the top of their tent. Well, the rainwater built up in the center of the tent until it finally became too heavy and broke the awning right in half and dumped about 40 gallons of water on the tent that my daughter and son-in-law were sleeping in. And woke up rather startling. By the way, I remember this bear picture. I had gone up to the trash cans to empty the trash, and there were some baby cubs coming out of the trash cans up there. And I immediately fled back to where my parents were, and I remember that my parents were banging on tin pots and creating all sorts of noises to scare the bears off. But yeah, I remember walking up there. Now that's Virginia City out there with the old boardwalks. I have since visited this place again. Look at the old cars then. Gee, that's only 50 plus years ago. Anyway, Virginia City was has been modernized, but the old boardwalks are still there, and it's still fun going through the old shops. And there's antiques there, and there we are looking in the old places. A lot of fun. About 3 years ago, which would be the year 2000, Dorothy and I took our grandson Ian through Virginia City, and it still has the boardwalks. Many of the old buildings now have been opened up to tourist shops and you know, the trinkets and the artwork and stuff, and antique shops. Anyway, back to the Hale family. We drove from Virginia City over to Lake Tahoe, which is not that far. And Lake Tahoe is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful lake. The water is just crystal clear and a shade of blue that you won't find anyplace else. And it is built up along the west side with a lot of houses and hotels and stuff. But if you drive along the east side of the lake, there are many beaches and many coves, and just it seems to be untouched shoreline. So it's really worth seeing. Sorry that these motion pictures weren't in color to show the color of the water, but it was a magnificent lake, and it's still worth seeing if you ever get a chance. While we're watching the zoo pictures, I'm going to tell you a love story. Here I am, probably about 6 or 7 years old. So let's see, if I was 7, that would be about 1944. Well, across the ocean in Berlin, Germany, on the 10th of October 1942, a young little girl was born, and her name was Dorothea Sigrid Heinold. And this is her parents, her mother Ellie and her father Carl. And this was right in the middle of World War II, when the city was being bombed. This young lady was born, and she was going to have a strong effect, at least on my life. So let's watch the zoo pictures, and I will tell you a story. I joined the Army in September of 1960, and on the 7th of August 1961 I was stationed in Berlin, Germany. And I arrived in Berlin, Germany exactly 5 days before the wall went up, and I saw quite a bit of history. During that time I saw or know of 57 people that died trying to come across that wall to freedom. That's how important freedom is to people. Anyway, I was stationed in Berlin, Germany, and on the 6th of October 1962, let's see, 1962, that would make me 25 years old. I was sitting in this little nightclub. I was sipping a beer, minding my own business, and I asked this young cute Fräulein to dance. And I always like to say that I've been paying for that dance ever since. Anyway, I met Dorothea Sigrid Heinold, and I had asked her to dance. And we proceeded to start dating. We dated about 3 times, and I realized that I was going out with a very nice young lady, and I did not want to get mixed up with a nice young lady. So I quit going out with her. And somehow she got a hold of the phone number where I was stationed, and she says, "I know you don't want to go out with me anymore, but I would like to know why." So I agreed to meet with her, and we got together, and I explained to her that I had a girl back in the United States, and I didn't want to get mixed up with a German girl, that I didn't believe in mixed marriages, that Germans should marry Germans and Americans should marry Americans. And that if she wanted to continue to date, I would tell her about the United States. She could teach me about Berlin. But come the 9th of September 1963, I was going to go home, and I was going to go home single. Well, she agreed to that. And we did. We dated for the next 11 months. But Come September 9th, 1963, Dorothea and her mother came down to see me off at the train station. And I never thought I would ever see her again, and Dorothea never thought that she would see me again. But Dorothea's mom turned and told Dorothea as they were riding home, "You haven't seen the last of him." Well, I came home, and the old girlfriend had gotten married to somebody else, and I was dating around and playing around. And in the meantime, I was writing Dorothea 3 and 4 times a week. It was writing me, and we would talk to each other once a month. And finally, after about 4 months of this, I proposed to her by mail, and she accepted by mail, and we had a 10-month-long engagement period, all by mail. And she arrived in the United States on the 2nd of October 1964, and 8 days later, the 10th of October, we were married. And of course, the rest is all history. On the 10th of October 1964, I would be 27 years old, and on that day, a young bride from Berlin, Germany would be 21 years old, just 4 days short of her 22nd birthday. Anyway, my mom and Dorothea had arranged the wedding, and we walked down the aisle. Interesting how skinny I was in those days. I weighed a whole 127 pounds. I hate to tell you what I weigh now. Anyway, we had the wedding reception in the patio in the Dale property in the backyard. And let's see, here's a photograph of the entire group. And on the left is Gil and Betty Newton, my sister, and the little girl down in front is Laura Dana Newton, now Laura Breton. There's Dorothea and I, and that's my best friend, Jay Redka, who we have stayed in touch, and that's my mom and dad. Sage and Zoe, this is your mom, Laura Dana, and she was the flower girl at my wedding, and she was so shy she had real problems walking down the aisle. And that's your grandmother, my sister, Betty Newton. As a result of my marriage to Dorothea, this is Tamara Ellie Hale, and she has been a joy in my life. And I now have a grandson who is 15 years old, and this little girl you're looking at is now 37 years old. Wow, we're growing up. This is the Holly family. That's James, my daughter Tammy, and my grandson Ian. And we were on a fishing trip when this picture was taken in Devil's Postpile, and a lot of good memories. But that's the grandson, the daughter, and the son-in-law. Dorothea and I and Tammy moved to Orange County from San Diego in 1970, and we have lived up in Orange County ever since. But we still get down to San Diego and visit the relatives, and we have gone to the zoo once in a while, and it's still a fun place to go. Tammy now lives over in the city of Orange. Dorothea and I are both retired and live in a place called Leisure World in Laguna Woods, which is near El Toro Road and the 5 freeway, and it is a retirement community, and life has been good to us. As I work on these films, I just realized that today is the 27th of February, the year 2003, and my sister and Gil Newton have been married 48 years today. That's a great record. I got a chance to call my sister yesterday on the 26th and sing happy birthday to her, and we talked about old times and making these movies, and she filled me in on some details of how Gil and her met and the first date, and when I get a chance I'll throw a little of that in here too. Well, I have to be about 11 years old. Near downtown La Mesa, before they built houses all over this hill, was a hillside covered with eucalyptus trees, and somebody had hung a rope from one of the high branches. So when you swing off the top of the hill and out over the bottom of the hill, you got quite high up in the air. And of course, you know, as a kid of 11 years old, who's got any sense about falling off? By the way, I almost did fall off that thing one time. That was a long ways down. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. Just another one of the kid things to do. Which reminds me that coming up here are some pictures of my sister Betty Louise in a formal outfit, and I talked to her about that, and Betty apparently went with Gil Newton to a formal affair when she was a sophomore. Now, this was something arranged by Gil's mother, so they don't consider this as a first date. They actually considered a first date as in their senior year, where Gil took her to dinner and to a movie. But anyway, my sister got all dressed up in a formal outfit, very, very nice outing, and good memories for her. And there you are. Summer of 1949, and yes, this trip did make a big impression on me. I was 12 years old. Betty was 15 and a half, and the reason, I guess one of the reasons why this trip was so memorial, one is my sister kept a diary on the trip, and we also, and she made a scrapbook, and she made a map of everywhere that we traveled. We started off from San Diego, and as you saw, we went through Las Vegas, and then across the desert into Utah. That was a 1946 Plymouth, and I made an error. I said 56. It's actually a 1946 Plymouth. Automobile in its time. I remember in those days we used a water cooler in the window, hung on the window, to keep the inside of the car cool. Did not have air conditioning in those days. Anyway, one of the major stops was in Salt Lake City, and this is the temple, and there's my sister and myself and my mom at the Mormon temple. I guess they call them Seventh-day Adventists these days, and it was a very interesting place, and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir sings there. The state of Utah is a beautiful state. We were headed for Wyoming, and we were headed for Yellowstone National Park, which was high on our list. Now, I don't know where we are right here in this picture, but there's some beautiful waterfalls there. Anyway, Yellowstone is a fascinating place, and I hope all of you get an opportunity to visit and to really do some sightseeing there. My gosh, my dad was thin in those days. Oh, that reminds me, for Pearlie Hale, did not quit smoking until he was 52 years old. He got down to 108 pounds. Now that's skinny for a man that is 6 foot tall. Anyway, he gave up smoking when he was 52, put a weight on, lived until he was 86 years old, and weighed about 175. And he really did recover from that. Anyway, these are some gorgeous waterfalls, and I really would like to know where it is. Dorothea and I and Ian have been back to Yellowstone National Park with the travel trailer and spent several days there touring it. Dorothea and I have been back 2 or 3 times, and it is a marvelous place to really get out and take a look. Now, these are some beautiful wildflowers at that time of the year when you're that far north in the United States. And I have to believe this is still part of Utah before we get to Yellowstone. By the way, we getting to Yellowstone, we go through Grand Teton. Oh, here we are in Yellowstone now. Anyway, Grand Teton is only about 35 miles outside from the entrance to Yellowstone National Park, so it's good to see them both. And Jackson Lake in Grand Teton is a wonderful place. Also, what is a lot of fun is Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Actually, it's just called Jackson, Wyoming, but a lot of people call it Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Anyway, there is excellent playhouse in Jackson. What is very famous in Jackson also is the town center, where they have arches built out of antlers from elk that it was hunted over the years. It's become quite a landmark. There also is a world-famous bar in there called the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, and the seats in the bar, instead of having stools, are saddles, and it's quite interesting. Unfortunately, Ian could only peek in through the windows because they wouldn't let anybody like him in to really see the place. Anyway, the craters and the hot pools of water are wonderful. If you get a chance, take time to walk through the Old Faithful Inn there. This happens to be a Lone Star geyser, and we went out to see it, and it only erupts about every three and a half hours, and we happened to be there when it went off, and it was quite fascinating to see all this extremely hot water coming out of the geyser. And I have to assume that my dad walked out there a little bit closer. Nope, there's my dad. Well, anyway, then of course Old Faithful. We've been back to Old Faithful. It does not go up as high as it does anymore, simply by the I can't think of the word, as the hole that the water comes out of is slowly being filled in by natural growth. But it's still picturesque now. They've built a lot of benches around here so they can seat several, well, I'd say a couple thousand people all at one time and watch that thing go. Now, of course, you want to do not want to be downwind of that hot water. Even though the air cools the water off in a hurry, it still can be a little bit dangerous. And definitely, on walking around here, we had to stay on these paths. So, you know, when you're 12 years old and you see these things for the first time, it's just really impressive. I was told also, one of the things I still remember from that is the ranger talking about people bringing animals down here, like dogs, and failing to put them on a leash. And the dog, especially in the Labrador type, that just dearly loves water, runs and jumps into a pool of boiling water and kills them instantly. Boy, that's pretty there. And see, that was one of the things there that people were throwing pennies into that pool, and that does not help the environment at all. It does. Anyway, these are all pictures around the. Now, this is called the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and that waterfall is world famous. You know, it's a lot of fun. As a kid, we slept in tents. That's the only way we could afford to travel, and we would spend 2 weeks on the road. So this was quite a long trip for being 2 weeks on the road. By the way, there was a stone storage area there, right there to the left of the picture, and that is where you put your food both day and night to keep bears from getting in it. Fishing trip. My dad took us out on a boat onto Yellowstone Lake, and we caught fish, and I caught 4, and my sister caught 2, and my dad caught 1, and of course it was a big thing. Okay, we have probably headed south now towards Colorado and the Rocky Mountain National Park area, and that was a sign going over the Continental Divide. And the Rocky Mountains are just absolutely gorgeous. Later on, Dorothy and I have been to the Canadian Rockies, and they're spectacular also. But there is a road here in Rocky Mountain National Park that is above 12,000 feet. It's probably one of the highways around. I don't know that they consider it a year-round highway, because I think when the winter comes, they just close that off. There's Buffalo. Now from, I remember Estes Park too. Estes Park is a fun place just to walk through. There's a lot of artists there, a lot of course, tourist shops and stuff, but it's still just a fun place to walk through. Walking through Cliff Palace. When you are 12 years old, it is a huge cliff dwelling. When you walk through the cliff dwelling when you're 64 years old, it's not quite as large, but it is a large dwelling. It did house over 500 Indians, the largest cliff dwelling that we know of, and it was a fascinating thing to walk through. You can only go through portions of it now, again, because foot traffic started to cause erosion. That's me sitting on the edge of a kiva there, in a 4-story building that we visit. There's several dwellings around Mesa Verde. Anyway, we're going to go into Monument Valley. And this was a fascinating trip because we ran into an Indian lady on this trip. A Navajo Indian lady sitting alongside the road in full costume. We thought she was sitting there to get her picture taken and make money, when in fact all she was doing was waiting for a bus to take her into Flagstaff to the all-Indian powwow. It was a fun trip. Another vacation. This trip is in 1950, and that is my sister and her best friend Elaine Ellers. Now I guess she is Elaine Walker. And this is a trip to Oak Creek Canyon near Flagstaff, the Grand Canyon, Bryce, and Zion. Now this road coming out of Prescott and going through the city of Jerome is really worth the trip. If anybody gets a chance, the city of Jerome is an old mining town built on a hillside. A lot of it is sliding down the hillside. Now there's a gorgeous picture. And you know what a lot of people don't realize is how much there is to do around Oak Creek Canyon. The city of Sedona is there, which is very well known and worth seeing. Here is Betty and Elaine, and they have caught a fish. Anyway, on the 4th of July in the city of Flagstaff, which is very close to Oak Creek Canyon, is an all-Indian rodeo and parade. And when you're young, let's see, 1950, in July, I would be, 13 years old. And so all this was very, very impressive. And the covered wagons that these people rode to Flagstaff in actually had car tires on them. Anyway, what I was saying, if anybody in the next generation, Ian and Zoe and Catalina and Sage, get a chance to explore out around Sedona, Oak Creek Canyon, there's a lot to do there. A lot of people don't realize there is a Indian reservation or Indian monument there called Wapakai. There's a place called Walnut Canyon that has a lot of cliff dwellings. There is Montezuma's Castle, which is one of the tallest cliff dwellings in the United States. There is Sunset Craters. There is a church near Sedona designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, which is just, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful churches ever built. Anyway, there's just a tremendous amount to do and see there. Then another thing that was good memories about this place is when my grandson Ian was 8 years old and I was 58, which makes that about 7 years ago. Ian and I went to Oak Creek Canyon and stayed there. Like I like to say, is it was just grandson and grandpa and no adult supervision whatsoever. And we spent some time at Slide Rock, and Ian was jumping off the cliff into pools of water, like in the background there where I'm climbing the rock. It was just gorgeous pools there in Oak Creek Canyon. Anyway, it was a lot of fun memory of father and grandfather and grandson going out and doing this type of thing. That's my mom. Anyway, we went from Oak Creek Canyon up to the Grand Canyon, and I believe we went to Bryce and Zion also. This is a place where we wanted to go up and see Montezuma's Castle, and we couldn't find any rangers, so I went and found a ranger and brought him back. Now, in those days, you were allowed to climb ladders up into the ruins themselves. But because traffic has got so great, so many people visiting these sites, that they no longer allow these type of trips into the ruins themselves. What's so famous about this particular dwelling is that it was 4 stories high, and that was one of the tallest dwellings there. There we are, all around the campground. Now, what's one of the things I got from my parents is the love for the outdoors. And back in the mid-60s, when Dorothea and I got married, Dorothea did try to go camping with me. She went about 3 times and then gave it up and quit for the next 30 years. Her idea of roughing it's the 3rd floor of the Hilton. She says when she goes on a trip, she doesn't like to wash, cook, and clean. So I can understand that. And here is suspension bridge, and this is Zion National Park. Anyway, of course, in retirement, Dorothy and I have bought a nice travel trailer. The travel trailer has a slide out which makes into a large living room area. Comes with microwave and refrigerator and stove and queen size bed and air conditioning and forced air heating. I mean, that's the height of camping. Jeez, I can remember when I used to sleep on an air mattress on a tarp underneath a tree. I guess when you get older, you just like your creature comforts. There is Betty Blair and Joe Blair. Joe Blair is my mom, Zoe Hale, her twin brother, right there. And they're both gone now. As we get older, you know, more and more relatives are dying off, so it still has good memories of meeting. They lived in Whittier, and we lived in San Diego, and we would meet someplace and travel together, and it was a lot of fun. Anyway, about that travel trailer, Dorothy and I and Ian have taken it all over western United States and Alaska, and hopefully this year we can travel around the United States. Now this is Bryce Canyon, and without a doubt, I hope you all get a chance to go there. This is Dorothea's favorite place, or one of her favorite places, because there are some beautiful hiking trails down in the canyon. And about 2 years ago, Ian and I and Dorothea took the Fairyland Trail, which is about 5 miles in length, and just had a marvelous time. It was absolutely gorgeous. By the way, coming up here is an old 1946 Chrysler that my parents had, and look at the air cooler in the window there. That's instead of our air conditioning. January 1951, the Rose Parade. While you're watching all these beautiful floats go by, I'll say that my parents took Betty and I and my grandma Blair up to the Rose Parade. We had to get up very early in the morning to see it. It was well worth it. I've always wanted to go back, but it's just too crowded now. But while you're watching the floats, I want to tell you a story. And that is a story about Zoe Carmen Hale. You remember that World War II started on the 7th of December 1941 and lasted until August of 1945. During that time, my dad, Pearlie Hale, was actually too skinny to serve in the armed forces. They turned him down. He got his draft notice and then was refused because he was just too skinny. Anyway, during those war years, everybody did their part, and in the defense industry, a lot of women went to work. Well, my mom went to work, I believe it was for Consolidated Aircraft Company in San Diego. And she had several jobs while she worked there, and one of them was a forklift operator, and she was a riveter, and we used to tease her about being called Rosie the Riveter. That term was very famous back in the 40s. And she was also a truck driver. Now, one time, and she could drive big trucks. One time, they loaded up a big Navy fighter, I believe. Let's see, what was it called? Hellfighter, I think it was called. Anyway, they loaded this fighter aircraft on the flatbed of a 18-wheeler, and it was my mom's responsibility to drive this up and deliver it to a location in Los Angeles. So my mom did that, but she took a little detour. In Los Angeles, or in Los Angeles County, is the city of Whittier, and my grandmother Blair, or my mom's mother, lived in Whittier. So she brought her big 18-wheeler with this Navy fighter on the back up and parked it right in front of my grandma's house. My grandma came out. She couldn't believe that somebody was parking this big truck out there, and she did not recognize the person that got out of the truck that was wearing Levi's and a red bandana, looked like a boy, even though it was a small boy, and didn't recognize her own daughter until they got close to each other. Anyway, love telling that story because my mom did do her part, and she did drive an 18-wheeler with a airplane all the way back. Let's see what else I can tell you about the Hale family. Another couple of stories about Zoe Carmen Hale. One is that she was involved with the Cub Scouts when I was in the Cub Scouts, but she was really primarily involved with the Bluebirds and the Campfire Girls. And my sister was in both of those, and my mom was a leader. And I was so small in those days that whenever they went to the Campfire Girl meetings, I got drug along. And when they would go camping at the Campfire Girls Camp of Wallahi up in Lake Cuyamaca, I would get dragged along. But as a result of getting dragged along with all those older women, here I was a little 4 or 5-year-old kid, is I learned a lot about handcraft. I learned how to do all sorts of beadwork and make beaded belts and weaving, and later on I worked for the city of La Mesa as a handcraft specialist. So that part paid off. Also, later on, my mom worked in a nursery school, and Laura and Holly and Tammy would all remember her over at La Mesa Methodist Church, where she worked in a like a daycare center, our early nursery school for kids. She was always involved, and later on in life, towards the end, she was a volunteer in a hospital, a little what they call a candy striper, wear her little pink smock around and help other people. So she was a very kind person. Well, it was a beautiful rose parade, and I hope that you all enjoyed looking at all the pretty floats. It's quite an exciting thing to do. Hope you get a chance to do it. 1951, it looks like it's working now. My sister's graduation. She graduated from Grossmont Senior High School. That was grades 9 through 12. And, of course, Gil Newton graduated that same year. And this ceremony took place on top of Mount Helix in Grossmont, California. And it's still worth seeing. They have some beautiful Easter sunrise in this amphitheater. Anyway, that's where my sister went to school. I went to Helix High School, which was built and opened up in 1952. And then there was a lot of football competition between Grossmont and Helix. And my sister was for Grossmont, and I was from Helix. That's my grandmother in there. And that's little me. Beach party time. About 1952. This is with my aunt and uncle Howard and Alma, and my cousin Orv, and there's several other members of the Blair family. There is Wally Blair and his wife, and Homer McMillan on the left. And in here is some pictures. Oh, there's my uncle Howard. Dorothy and I would go over to Alma and Howard's when we were first married and play pinochle. I would play a lot of pinochle. And then my cousin Orv right there, he and I were always getting into mischief in the church youth group. Oh, we had fun. Well, 1952 or 1953, I have to be either 15 or 16 years old. And this is in the backyard of the La Mesa property, and that is my dad there with a beautiful butterfly. Now in the background here you'll see my dad and I taking turns shooting some baskets, but the backboard of the basket that we're basketball playing is a enclosed patio, and those canvas curtains would roll down to make it weatherproof, and the sides would be either boarded up or had windows on them. And Dorothy and I had our wedding reception, and we had a lot of get-togethers in the back, a nice fireplace inside, very nice patio. This was my dog, Buster. And I had him for about 12 years, and he was just absolutely a very, very smart dog. I entered him in a couple amateur dog fairs where he took first place for best trained. He would follow me to school. We would go do all sorts of things together. When I would run my paper route, he would run alongside. Anyway, I had him for about 12 years, and a lot of fond memories. I still have a bunch of photographs. I have no idea who these little girls are in this picture. Helix High School Marching Band. I was in that band, I think, for all 4 years, but the main ones were my junior and senior year. Oh, by the way, that's my sister and an old ex-girlfriend in that picture. Anyway, I was in the Helix High School Marching Band, green and silver. was our colors. And there would be band reviews both in Long Beach, which we're looking at now, and also in Chula Vista area in South San Diego. But the big competition was between the Helix Band and the Grossmont Band, just like in football. And it was old Dan Lewis there as the band leader. Anyway, we would go to these competitions, and they would be fierce competitions on not the quality of marching and the performance, but it was always exciting. And also in Long Beach at that time was the POP, the Pacific Ocean Park. That's where they had a roller coaster in those days that went out over the water. Anyway, we would come to these band reviews. Oh, now this baton twirler is Elaine Ellers. No, not Elaine Ellers, Phyllis Ellers, which was Elaine's sister. Now remember, Elaine was my sister's best girlfriend, and Phyllis went to Helix High School, and she was the baton twirler. Anyway, good looking band there. And here I am. Let's see, 55, that would make me 17 years old in those pictures. And golly, you know, maybe the girls like a guy that goes in a uniform. Anyway, here's Phyllis Ellers and leading off the band. I believe in 1955 we won it, and in 1956 Grossmont High School won it. And of course my sister was rooting for Grossmont and I was rooting for Helix. And here's Grossmont High School. And you know, that was just part of growing up. I was involved with the chess club, the journalism club, the ice skating club, the band. You know, it was just tried to be part of everything. Oh, actually, it was on a baseball team there too. I was the like the bat boy, or what they call the manager. Anyway, I got to go to all the baseball games and got my jacket that way. The senior prom, 1956. I didn't have a date, so the school found me a date. And a very nice young lady by the name of Ramona, called her Ray Compton. And I got to meet Ray 45 years later at a high school reunion. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, God, formals were a big thing in those days. And here's how I paid for the formals. This is the way I made money around the house, is I did painting for my parents. And here I am climbing up on a ladder, and I am painting the sides of the garage. That's what I did to pick up extra bucks. Ah, yes. Now that's Peanuts. What am I talking about? That's the name of the little sailboat. That was a Penguin class sailboat that my parents bought so they could go sailing in San Diego Bay. In this particular case, we brought it all the way up to Huntington Lake, which is in Central California. And my parents knew how to tip that boat over on a regular basis. I mean, I was up there at Huntington Lake one day with them, and went skin diving. I came out of the lake, and they were sitting on the shoreline with blankets wrapped around them, just shivering to death. They had tipped it over. I never did tip that boat over. I learned to sail that thing real well, and there I am in my skin diving gear. Boy, I love to skin dive. Anyway, yeah, see, there's a little. It's a little 11-foot boat. Had a little centerboard that you pulled down, and then of course you pulled the mast down each time. But we had a lot of fun with that little thing. Even after I got married, Dorothy and I took it out several times. This is still the Huntington Lake area. It's a pretty place to visit. But I was reminded about sailboats. Dorothy and I were in Fiji, and we rented a catamaran about 15 feet in length and sailed it from one island to another, 8 miles across open water. I mean, that is not the smartest thing in the world, but we did it. Dorothy had a life preserver on and sat in the middle of the canvas deal, and I steered the boat. I took up diving when I was about 18 years old, and by the time I was 20, I was doing it 2 or 3 days a week. I was attending college, holding down a part-time job, and spent a tremendous amount of my time off of La Jolla Cove or La Jolla Shores. I love to dive. I have invested in all sorts of equipment, including the aqualungs and spear guns and underwater cameras. I've been diving to 120 feet off of Point Loma after abalone. 120 feet, by the way, is almost 4 times atmospheric pressure. I had a friend of mine by the name of Lee Hobby that you'll see here. He weighed 350 pounds. He was a very fat individual, and he wore 16 pounds of lead weight just to get down to zero buoyancy. But he was a good friend. He passed away some years ago. Anyway, I had to give up diving when I got married. Dorothea was always afraid that something would happen to me, and so I had to sell everything off. And but she did allow me, or still allows me, to do free diving or snorkeling, just a face mask, fins, and free diving down and checking out things on the bottom. It's just a lot of fun. It's beautiful down there. Gil and Betty dragged me along to St. Louis in 1958. Now that car is the car they bought when they got married, or Gil bought it when they got married, and they drove that car all the way to Alaska, where Gil was stationed in the Army. They did that in the middle of the winter time, and to me that's quite a feat. I understand the roads are frozen, but very smooth at that time of year. Anyway, trip to St. Louis. Gil and Betty invited me along. I still don't know why I was invited along, but I was invited along. And the purpose of going all the way to St. Louis was to see Gil's brother Dana marry a lady by the name of Ramona. I don't know Ramona's maiden name. So we drove across the United States. Maybe I helped with driving. I was pushing 21 years old because I remember on the 15th of August we were in St. Louis, and I had my very first legal martini. So what can you say? Anyway, on the way back, we would camp and picnic, and it was quite a drive, quite an adventure. I remember that we stopped in Rocky Mountain National Park, and or was it Rocky Mountain National Park? No, maybe it wasn't. But we stopped in some lake, and I did some diving, and I lost a swim fin. Oh God, I was terrible. You know where I think this is near Dinosaur National Park, out in Utah, at least close to it. It looks like that type of country. By the way, that's one of Dorothea's favorite national parks, if anybody ever gets a chance to go to it. Anyway, it was a fun trip. We made it, didn't kill each other. In high school, I had a best friend, and his name was Jay Redka. We bummed around together through our senior year, which was 1956, and in 1958, July of 1958, Jay turned 21. He was 1 month older than I was, and he bought himself a 1958 MGA. I mean, absolutely a classic body style. And we used that car to go on road rallies, and on these road rallies they would do safety checks on the car and test drives and make sure that it was in good mechanical condition. And I would act as navigator for Jay on these trips. And he was absolutely in love with this car. So I got out my dad's motion picture camera, and I took pictures of him driving the freeways, and there he comes right down the middle lane right there. And then he would come out on the other side. He would have to make 2 trips to make that film like that. Anyway, it was quite an automobile, and he was quite proud of it. Anyway, Jay was the best man at my wedding. And that was in 1964, and he was married. Now I was married, and we sort of kind of just drifted apart. He was working for the telephone company, and I was working for Tom McCann Shoes, and we lost contact with each other. Oh, I love this. I was standing up on a top of a ladder, filming down on it. Anyway, we lost touch with each other for over 30 years, and I was able to track down an old phone number through the alumni at Helix High School, and doing some detective work on the internet, I was able to track Jay down. And about 3 years ago, Jay's wife Sherry and I and Dorothea all got together, and it was a great reunion. In December of 1958, I went to work full-time for a company called Tom McCann Shoes, and I stayed with that company for 20 and a half years. I was a manager of a store for most of those years, and it was a good career. At age 42, I realized I was putting in a lot of hours, and I changed careers and ended up going to work for Hughes Aircraft for another 20 plus years. So it was my two careers. I believe this is about 1961, and Laura Dana Newton Britton would be about 1 year old. That's La Jolla Cove, and here is Laura Dana, and we are at Mission Beach, and there is my sister Betty, and my mom, and that is our sailboat, and that was Peanuts, the sailboat, and we are at the beach, and we're having a lot of fun. Now, these are all the 8mm films I have of Laura. I have none Holly, sorry to say. I think they switched over to different type of camera or different type of photographs. I don't know which. Anyway, I do have at the tail end here some pictures of some snapshots that I've included, some photographs that I've included. That does include one picture of Holly when she was a tiny little thing. There's some scenes here with my sister and Laura in the backyard of our, and that is an old girlfriend. And there's Laura and my sister, and that's Wes and Fran Height, who lived across the street. And there's Grandma Zoe, or my mom Zoe. Oh, and the dog. Yes, that was my mom's dog, Bo. Oh, he was a favorite even of Tammy when Tammy was growing up. Okay, there's Holly and Laura, first baby pictures. And there is father and mother and baby. And there's Grandpa and Laura. And here's my favorite one, the shy flower girl at Dorothea's and my wedding. Well, we come to the end of the movies. These are the last motion pictures that were taken by my parents, Zoe and Pearlie Hale. They were visiting me in Virginia, near Virginia Beach, when I was stationed in the military there. And that was, I went into the service in September of 1960. I was shipped over to Berlin, Germany in 1961. This, by the way, in the background is Williamsburg, if you get a chance to see it. Notice how skinny Grandpa was. He finally quit smoking and gained some weight. Anyway, at the end of this movie, I have thrown in a whole bunch of snapshots, just kind of covering the history. That is Wesley Haig, a Rear Admiral. That was my dad's uncle. And anyway, I've thrown in a whole bunch of old photographs in here that will have a brief visit of history and bring you up to date. I'm going to sign off now and say thank you to everybody. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Sit back and let's let the photographs roll.